A surprisingly large number of businesses have stuck with their pledge not to support congressmen who voted to overturn the election on January 6th. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, maybe you could like this video and subscribe to this channel, maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. So Judd Legum at Popular Information has established a January 6th Corporate Accountability Index. And as always, I'll post links to the articles down below. The reason he established this index is to make sure that businesses can't escape from the commitments that they made after the January 6th insurrection. As you may recall, many businesses said they were not going to contribute to members of Congress who voted to overturn the election. At the time, everyone, many Republican and elected officials included, were outraged by what happened. In response, many businesses said, we're not going to contribute to those who vote to overturn the election, or we're just going to pause our political contributions for the time being. Now, Popular Information, which has done a great job with its investigative reporting, making sure that businesses are held accountable for their actions, has established this index to make sure that we don't forget about the commitments that these businesses made and allow them off the hook. You should know that many lobbyists and Republican activists in Washington are urging these businesses to get past what happened on January 6th. And if we forget about these commitments that the businesses made, then obviously they're just going to start contributing like nothing ever happened. This would be part and parcel with the Republican strategy, which is completely backed off from the commitments that they made on January 6th. I mean, we might recall Kevin McCarthy expressing his outrage on January 6th at the insurrection. Since then, though, he's completely changed his tune. The fear is that these businesses are going to do the same thing and go back to contributing to Republicans as they once did. Unbelievably, according to the research in Popular Information, only one corporation has directly violated its pledge, where it said it would not donate to those members of Congress, but then has proceeded to do so, and that is Cigna. And we should remember that, and Cigna should be held accountable for their behavior here. The only way businesses are going to change their behavior is if they know that it's embarrassing to them and hurting their profitability. But amazingly, Popular Information was able to list 42 companies that have kept their promise as they made that they would not contribute to the Republican objectors, and an additional 59 companies that have not donated directly or indirectly to the 147 Republican objectors. In other words, more than 100 companies pledged not to make contributions. These are all large companies that were big players in Washington and have stuck by that pledge. This is really quite a change. And you can see why lobbyists and Republican activists are urging these businesses to kind of put this insurrection behind them and move on and go back to contributing the way they did. After all, Republicans rely a lot more on corporate donations than do Democrats. You can see the difference in the grassroots fundraising efforts of the two parties. On the Republican side, you've got a group called Win Red. Now, this is a for-profit company owned by a former Trump staffer who was denied security clearance and as a result had to leave his appointed job at the White House. And they use a credit card clearing company that's invested in by, wait for it, Jared Kushner's brother. As Rick Wilson, a former Republican consultant, pointed out, the victor is always the Trump family and their immediate friends. Not surprisingly, there were other Republican organizations that raised money for Republican candidates, but these organizations have basically been iced out. And the National Republican Party has basically said that candidates who do not use WinRed, which again is a for-profit company generating revenues for Trump family and friends, that these candidates would be denied any support by the National Republican Party. Now contrast that with the Democratic alternative, which is Act Blue. Many of you may be familiar with that. In fact, many of you, like me, might have already made contributions through it. Act Blue was founded in 2004 in the wake of the Howard Dean campaign. Howard Dean, as you may recall, was incredibly successful and really established the blueprint for online fundraising that Democrats have followed since, including the incredibly successful online fundraising efforts of the Obama campaigns. In last year's Senate races, Jamie Harrison in North Carolina substantially outraised Lindsey Graham in the race, largely as a result of Act Blue's efforts. Now, Act Blue, unlike WinRed, is a non-profit corporation. In other words, nobody is taking out money out of this company. And as a result, its fees are substantially lower than WinRed. In the 2020 election, Act Blue substantially outraised WinRed, $3.2 billion to $1.9 billion, essentially raising 68% more than the Republican alternative. This year, WinRed has managed to narrow the gap a little bit. According to campaign finance filings, so far this year, Act Blue has raised $373.9 million and WinRed $258.3 million. So Act Blue is still ahead, but the difference becomes even more pronounced when you look at the amount of money actually going to the candidates. Act Blue turned over $336.7 million to the candidates it was supporting. That's more than 90% of the funds that were raised through its engine. WinRed, on the other hand, only turned over $199.9 million, which means that it was only turning over 77% of its donations to its candidates. In other words, this year, the difference raised between Act Blue and WinRed in total was $115.6 million. But the difference between what they gave to the candidates was $136.8 million. That's $21.2 million just going into the pockets of Trump staffers and family. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some of it even going directly into the Trump family's coffers. Now, generally speaking, I'd be outraged about Republicans using the political process for their own benefit. I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that anymore. But in this case, I'm actually kind of happy about it. Let the Trumps make money off of the Republican donors. In this case, that's $21.2 million that's not going to congressional candidates that will help them win elections against Democrats. And as long as these businesses keep to their pledges not to support the Republican objectors, that's going to turn into a big fundraising problem for the Republicans in the upcoming election. We as Democrats need to keep the pressure on these businesses. And as Judd Legume pointed out, we cannot allow the public and the mass media to forget about these pledges and allow the businesses to go back to their contributions the way they were before, just as the lobbyists want them to do. Well, if you agree with me or disagree with me, or if you have any questions about the fundraising, please feel free to leave some comments down below. And if you could like this video and subscribe to this channel, that'd be a huge help. I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.